Hello, and welcome to the Spec Shaman Podcast, the show that explores the world of building product manufacturers, architects and engineers, sustainable design, and technology and trends. We engage in thought-provoking discussions with renowned experts, industry pioneers, and visionaries who are making a significant impact in the construction industry. Join us as we explore groundbreaking ideas, revolutionary concepts, and the latest advancements shaping the built environment. The Spec Shaman Podcast is hosted by Laura Elliott, the lead instructional designer at Ron Blank and Associates. Laura is a seasoned interviewer with a passion for uncovering the untold stories behind success. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Let's get started.
Hi, and welcome to the Spec Shaman Podcast. I'm your host, Laura Elliott. Today, we are talking with Annie Bevan, a sustainability collaborator, facilitator, and visionary. Annie doesn't just want to talk about sustainable impact. She wants to facilitate action to create large-scale change using sustainability as a strategic business enabler. She does this in her role as CEO of Mindful Materials. Welcome, Annie.
Thank you for having me, Laura. Great to be here.
We are so excited to have you here today. I have heard so much about you and truly inspired by your work and all that you are doing with Mindful Materials. I like to start with our origin story. So how did you get involved in sustainable design, and what was your journey to where you are today?
Twisted road, that is for sure, Laura. Mm-hmm. And it has been one full of a lot of learnings. And I got my start in my career actually doing third-party certification of products and operations claims. So I got a really good front row seat to how a lot of products are made and manufactured, and also what are real legitimate claims and how to make sure that people are being truthful, and how are those things verified, and how do you organize that data and the spreadsheets that would validate those claims. I did a lot of work in regular sustainability consulting, publishing EPDs, LCAs, health product declarations, declare labels, etc. Then ventured into director of sustainability at various manufacturers, and actually was a director of sustainability at a communication cable manufacturer of all places. And they were leading the industry in sustainability, and I got the opportunity to lead their investments in sustainability. And I was the president of the company was actually asking, "Hey, Annie, we invest in sustainability. Can you please show me that this matters to our return on investment?" And it was a upsetting conversation, because the reality is there wasn't an easy way to show him the direct return on investment for our investment in sustainability. A lot of architects and designers at the time had sent us letters: if you don't have an EPD or an HPD, we're not going to specify you. And so I actually went to the LP50 at the time, which was the first group of really manufacturers that ILFI was organizing to rally behind the Living Product Challenge certification. And I thought to myself, is this just a communication cable problem, or is this a whole manufacturing problem? And what I found out, no matter what the product category was, all manufacturers, all of my peers, directors of sustainability, were having issues showing the return on investment for their investment in sustainability, despite their customers saying, if you don't have this, we're not going to specify you. And that's what led me down to the journey of really leading this LP50 effort back in 2018, where manufacturers came together, 75 of us, and wrote a letter to the A&D industry saying, thank you so much for you asking us for this information, because we now know our human health impacts and our environmental impacts, but we haven't seen that it matters to you. Because it's not resulting in specifications. And did that collaboratively with my partner in that work, Alex Muller, who I still work with to this day, leading that LP50 conversation. And what the result of that was the AIA Materials Pledge, and the architecture and design community coming back and saying, manufacturers, sustainability does matter to us, and we want to find and specify products that address these 5 impact categories: climate health, human health, ecosystem health, social health and equity, and a circular economy. I rattle those 3 impact categories off quite often, because that was the precipice and shape of Mindful Materials, and how I found myself in this role is through these various experiences, all different walks throughout the industry, but ultimately needing a place for materials to have a home and materials action to have a home. We all know that materials make up the buildings that we live in, and we all know buildings have a tremendous amount of impact, but we have no way to quantify the holistic embodied impacts of products and projects. And that's what Mindful Materials is set out to do, and how I started and how I got into this role. I might have answered 3 questions in the first question. Sorry about that, Laura. But,
I love a thorough answer. There's a lot there to unpack. And I just want to say that I'm impressed with the level of, I think, initial experience and investigation and really understanding the importance of authentic research and determining what's really effective. So it's a great and impressive thing to hear. So as the CEO of Mindful Materials, one of the most important resources, I think, to the AEC industry, what have you learned in your tenure, and where do you see the industry headed?
Oh, I've learned so many things. I would say the number one thing I've learned in this role at Mindful Materials is that as easy as one thing may appear to be, it is always significantly harder than one would think it is going to be. We're here to move an entire industry that's been doing the same things the same way for hundreds of years, but we know that this is one of the most important things that the world needs to unlock to be able to understand the holistic impacts of products in projects, so we can actually start to holistically reduce the impact of buildings, whether it be from a human health perspective, a carbon perspective, a social equity perspective. All of these things matter. And I'm so sorry, Laura, I forget your second question there. The second part of that question.
Oh yeah. And where do you see where do you see the industry headed?
Yeah. Well, to my long answers of all these things, I do see the industry headed to a materials easy button. We're on a great adventure here, where I see a world where everyone can actually start to, in their design process and the tools they're already using, start to be able to see products and how they meet or do not meet the material standard requirements of each individual firm or owner or project. And I see a world where we can actually start to quantify all of those impacts at the project level and start to benchmark and show how a project has in fact reduced their holistic impact based on the products they've selected. And I also see a world where we can actually start to evaluate real estate differently, because we can actually say this building has a substantially lower impact on human health. There's value there. Or we did not use forced labor. We did not use child labor to build any product or this building at all. There's value there. So how can we create an economics of scale that actually starts to value impact reduction outside of just the traditional ways to evaluate real estate? And that in turn, I think, will change the way the market considers sustainability. It's a must-have in business as opposed to a nice-to-have in business.
Yes, a good baseline, right?
Yes.
I think that's the goal, and all of those topics that we're trying to create benchmarks for are so valuable to progressing society forward, I think, at large. So
globally, right?
Yes. Yeah.
It's incredible how much impact there is.
I 100% agree. You know, my background is in some of these systems that that things are built and made in. And so I really value, especially the social equity piece. I think that that's an incredibly important thing to focus on in the midst of all of these other wonderful, sustainable design topics.
Yeah, I think, I'm going to misquote this, but if we solved some of these forced labor issues, the carbon issue also gets solved at the same time. There's a lot of intricacies and interconnectedness of these impacts. So just looking at one of them is not how we can solve the greater problems at hand.
Absolutely. Some of my early work involved educating people on those things. I think those systems of forced labor are hidden in a lot of ways. And so making sure that we help people understand that is a current issue is really important as well. So,
right. We are in the United States, but it doesn't mean there isn't that here. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. So over the past 10 years, the AEC industry has been focused on product transparency and disclosure. How important is product optimization, and what are you seeing in the industry in this regard?
Yeah, great question, Laura. And you need to understand every manufacturer, and the movement of transparency has been so important, because before the movement of transparency, not a single manufacturer knew what they were using to make their product when it comes to compositional chemistry outside of regulatory requirements. Mm-hmm. And not a single manufacturer knew the life cycle impacts or the embodied carbon impacts of their products. These are all essential documents and reports and assessments to conduct to say, where are my biggest impacts? But the reality is, of these transparency reports, though important and certainly worth it, we can't stop there as an industry to say an EPD or an HPD or a declare label is enough. We do have to start to consider, how can we move the conversation past, these are table stakes. Transparency is table stakes too. How have you actually used that information to reduce your impact, while also noting that manufacturers need to see incentive to do that because they're running businesses at the same time. They produce these transparency reports. Can they successfully track the return on investment for their investment in sustainability? If there is an opportunity to show that, but then also say, we would like to see how you are reducing your impact, and that is how we will start selecting products in the future, that will change the supply chain impact of the built environment significantly. I've had some really good conversations with Gina from the Healthy Building Network and Lindsay from the International Living Future Institute recently on how our three organizations can collectively come together to start to shape some of these questions and communications to accelerate the language around optimization, moving from just transparency to a multi-attribute optimized future. That's where we see the world heading and needing to head to actually reduce impact, as opposed to just talk about what the impact is.
Yeah, those collaborative efforts, I think, are really key too. You know, it's one thing to launch a mission on your own, but when you have partners in that, I think it can really move the needle in the right direction.
None of us, not a single organization in the world, can do this by themselves, no matter how big they are. A single one, and we ourselves included. And that's why we're trying to collaborate with every organization out there that has a role to play in materials in the built environment. And we've set up some really great strategic partnerships to accelerate and align this work, which is really exciting.
Oh, it's excellent. How have you created a common language around sustainable building materials?
Yeah, so when we were figuring out our path, Mindful Materials has actually been around for 10 years now. We got started and formed in HKS. That group was looking to more easily identify on the backs of product binders what products have these sustainable materials transparency certifications. And they gifted this idea, this concept of mindful materials to the entire industry, noting that they alone couldn't accelerate enough manufacturers to get these labels on the back of binders. And the concept of this collaborative work collectively together has been the basis of mindful materials for the past 10 years. And we evolved into a 501c3 nonprofit 3 years ago. And ultimately wanted to create a strategy in which case we became this facilitator of materials action and laid out a pathway for the materials easy button to actually be achieved, where architects and designers and owners can actually see what products meet their standard requirements and actually measure holistic impact. Manufacturers can more easily respond to the plethora of different requests they get. There is a clear aligned ask to manufacturers in a digitized system, so they can just more easily respond to these things and create strategic plan to actually reduce their impact. In order for any of this material easy button to happen, the industry has needed a common language, a way to talk about sustainable building products that we have not had. So our step one in this strategic plan to the Materials Easy button was to create the common materials framework. I mentioned the 5 impact categories that the AIA Materials Pledge addressed in their response letter to the LP50 in 2019. Climate health, human health, ecosystem health, social health and equity, and a circular economy. Those are the 5 impact categories that are the basis of the common materials framework. Mindful Materials facilitated a group of leading 100 plus manufacturers, owners, architects, designers, engineers, NGOs, third-party certification eco-labels, building standard certification bodies to come together to say, how can a manufacturer actually show that they are addressing any of those 5 impact categories? So we evaluated 150 plus eco-labels and standards and then connected essentially a framework that connects eco-labels and standards to impact, and then evaluates the data that is actually verified in those eco-labels and standards and connects that into impact. This is the industry's common language now for sustainable building products, but has a lot more power to actually start to accelerate that Materials Easy button and see data actually start to be able to be quantified towards those impact categories in the future.
So is that important for product manufacturers to get involved in product transparency efforts?
Yes. So what we're working on now that we just launched a brand new website 2 weeks ago at Living Future, mindfulmaterials.com. Check it out. And it shares this vision of the pathway to the Materials Easy button. It also provides resources for manufacturers, owners, architects, designers to join this work and communicate, leveraging the common materials framework. So we're all talking about the same thing in the same way. What the owners and architects are also doing is providing a focused and prioritized subset of the common materials framework that provides a very more specific pathway to certifications and transparency and optimization that one could consider investing in, that would cover specific data points and specific impact categories. So the common materials framework actually can help a manufacturer identify what that investment would support in terms of impact, but also data availability. As the conversation in the world continues to focus more on data and digitization of information, this is the start to unlocking that for manufacturers. So you can use an Airtable tool that we just released as a part of this output that actually you can go into and actually look at, okay, so I have an EPD and an HPD. How does that support the common materials framework? What the owners and architects are asking for. And the owners and architects are communicating in their specs and their RFPs that they're aligning around the common materials framework, and that they want all manufacturers to start to invest in communicating to them how their impacts in their certification and eco-labels support impact. So this is where we are right now in the journey. And there's a lot more that we're unpacking over the next year as well to create more and more resources to enable that technology to function together so that we can actually start to measure these impacts at the project level.
Well, what a wonderfully useful tool. And I just want to say congratulations on the new launch, and then also congratulations on the 10 years.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Exciting times. And it's been wonderful to collaborate with so many incredible people and organizations to see this work possible. My Mindful Materials staff are facilitators. We're communicators. We bring people together. There's so many people doing so many amazing parts of this work. We're just trying to make those dots connect so it's easier to understand because it's been so much, so big, so fast.
Yeah.
We need to make it easier. Hence the easy button that we're working on. Yeah.
Yeah, common language is important when you're trying to reach a goal. So
yes, if we're all talking in different languages, there's not much we can all do. So
it's hard to build anything.
Yes.
So that's very useful.
Yeah.
So Lead V5 will be launched sometime this next year.
Yes.
How will Mindful Materials and the Common Materials Framework integrate with Lead V5?
Yes, so excited. And I'm so appreciative of the USGBC and their continued leadership efforts and their evolution of the standard development like I said before, anything that appears to be easy is certainly not. And they have a large lift over there. We have been collaborating with the USGBC for many years, and actually at the Material Health Summit Living Future, and now at AIA next week, we're going to be announcing further progress of the alignment of the green building rating systems that includes LEED, WELL, Living Building Challenge, and the AIA Materials Pledge, all leveraging the Common Materials Framework as then included in their next versions of their standards. So LEED version 5 and the multi-attribute product credit aligns directly with the Common Materials Framework, and the resources we are developing for the industry are also going to be leveraged to be able to support clarity to the LEED rating system as well. So this is just the starting place, but we have committed publicly all of those are 5 entities that we will be continuing to work towards a more aligned future, leveraging a common language to make it easier to accelerate material sustainability for all parts of the green building world.
Well, that's just wonderful. And congratulations on that great collaborative effort as well, because I know that is not a small feat to integrate. And so it's really quite impressive. So what is the most urgent issue facing the AEC industry today, and what is the solution to fix it?
Architects and designers in the construction industry, they have hard jobs. They build buildings that we spend 90% of our time in, but also have all different types of purposes. And the job in itself is just something to be in awe of. But the AEC industry has had a hard time educating. They're not chemists, biologists, scientists, even. They're architects, they're designers. They design spaces, they build safe buildings to code and specify products. But so to translate the eco labels and standards industry, in which case we have 600 plus eco labels and standards across the built environment overall, to sort of dive into all of those and understand what those logos mean and what that actually is going to get you. And then let alone knowing how that relates to impact. Everyone can really understand, typically in concept, I don't want to really hurt humans by the products I'm selecting, and I don't really want to hurt the earth by the products I'm selecting. This is the impact conversation. We have not been able to bring the world of sustainability to the level of impact yet. And I think that's been one of the hardest things that the AEC industry has tried to solve and has not yet solved, is how does this translation become easier so everyone can participate, as opposed to 0.1% of the architecture and design community truly understanding all of those 600 plus eco labels and standards that are out there. And that's why it takes this large, global scale collaboration and alignment effort, leveraging a common language to get there. But I do think that's been one of the hardest pieces from the world that I sit in. There's a lot of other hard things in the architecture and design industry, and I'm not an architect, so I can't speak fully to that. But the time, energy, and money it takes to try and find more sustainable products and then understand what does it actually mean to be a sustainable product has certainly been a challenge.
Yeah, it's an immense task to synthesize all of that information and into a process, into a design process. So it's a great value what you're doing as far as creating a common language, and the collaborative effort I see kind of across the entire industry of sustainability, where we're really trying to make it a more accessible and applicable mission in design. So, and
one foot in front of the other, and then there will be more to come. Yes.
Yes. One bite at a time. Right.
Yes.
It's a big elephant.
Yeah, it is.
How are you answering industry needs through your staffing solutions initiatives for a better ROI in sustainability investments?
So I am the CEO of Mindful Materials, but I'm also the CEO of Parallel Sustainability. And Parallel Sustainability is a sustainability staffing company where we support nonprofits and manufacturers in building teams of people who have expertise and experience as fractional sustainability support staff to help strategically plan, implement, and then leverage sustainability in the marketplace. So that is a separate business from Mindful Materials, but another hat that I wear. And I'm able to do the work at Mindful Materials and various other places because I am the CEO of Parallel and am contracted staff at the other organizations that I help to run and manage sustainability strategy within.
Well, that's wonderful. That's got to be really meaningful when you're able to do that and make an impact with it.
Yes, it is, and it's we're seeing a world where there is a shortage of skilled workers, and we're also seeing a world where sustainability demand continues to increase. So Parallel was created in 2017 through some of my experiences where manufacturers were saying, "Hey, you gave me this certificate. What do I do now? I don't have the bandwidth, understanding, expertise to leverage this effectively." So Parallel was started in 2017 to sort of solve some of these problems that I was personally experiencing, and then noting that has only that demand of fractional workers or staff has only grown from there. So we actually place sustainability. We have a team of sustainability experts from all different walks of life that can be placed in various sustainability needs across the industry overall.
I have to say that I really appreciate the mindset of creating solutions. I think it's very easy to focus on the problems and not really move forward into a solution approach. So overall, that's a theme I'm hearing from you, is that when you see that there is an issue, you don't let it blockade you. You just create a solution to resolve it. And that's commendable for sure.
Thank you. We're certainly running out of time, in my personal opinion. And
Yes.
I think it's going to take all of us, and the more that we can collaborate and work on those solutions together. There's solutions, and then there's alignment and collaboration, which is a lot harder. But both are needed to
Absolutely.
solve the sheer massive amounts of problems that our current world faces. But sitting on a lawn chair drinking a beer sounds nice, but there only if the world exists, I suppose. So
I think those days are long gone.
Yeah.
So what is one piece of wisdom you would like to share with our listeners as we wrap up?
No matter what seat you sit in, you have a part to play in this. And I think it's really quite an opportunity to be in the built environment, as an architect, designer, as a manufacturer, as an owner, and know that you have power to change the impacts that we're seeing in this world by choosing better and more sustainable products and demanding them and making them and participating in this. And I ask everyone to consider joining this work, because the more people who join, the more ripple effects this makes, and the greater the opportunity for its success.
I couldn't agree more. Anything that we can do to support the sustainability work that you're doing, we're happy to do. And it is such a pleasure to have you here today to talk with our listeners about these really vital and integral issues to the health of our nation and our planet and all people. So
Thanks for having me, Laura. Appreciate being here, and for all of your work as well. Thanks for spreading the word.
Of course. How can listeners connect with the work you do?
You can go to connect with me on LinkedIn, Annie Bevan, or go to mindfulmaterials.com or workinparallel.com. Any of those resources are great.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Annie.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day, Laura. Thanks again.
You too.
Thank you for listening to the Spec Shaman podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to our show and leave us a review. The Spec Shaman podcast is produced by Laura Elliott and Brad Blank. A huge thank you to our guests who made this show possible. building product manufacturers who want to increase their specification opportunities, please visit specshaman.com or ronblank.com. Thanks all for this episode, folks. See you next time.